What's going on, family? How are we doing? How are you enjoying your day? How is everything going? I'm trying to move the chat around, and YouTube always moving where I see stuff at, and now I don't know where everything is. But how's everybody doing today? Please, 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 please take the time to actually hit that like button. Hit that like button. If you have not hit that like button yet, please, please, please hit that like button for me. And please go to subscribetobrown.com for me. If you can, if you can, please do that for me. I would appreciate it. You can also share the video. You can, do all of that good stuff. Hit the bell for the book club. Hit the bell for the book club so that, you get notifications when we go on and when we go online and all of that good stuff. Now I'm going to try to, for those of you who don't know, I hope those of you who are here actually read the book. And if you didn't, well, crib notes time. So we're going to talk about when affirmative action was white. And I just kind of want to get into it. Get your libations ready, whatever you need to have the conversations. You need plant-based life. Plant-based wife, you need a little libations. Yes, you might need some today. And it's Thursday, so do whatever you do though. I do not encourage, I do not discourage on that. You might need it. So I want to get directly into it. If you have your book handy, if you bought a paper book, have it handy. If you didn't, that's fine too. If you bought the audio book, I hope you took notes or whatever. But let's get into it, because one of the things I want to talk about in terms of how we frame this kind of conversation, and there's a reason why I've discussed this book and I wanted to bring it in here, because I think there are certain books that kind of provide pillars, that kind of undergird some of what we say. And you kind of need that as you go forward to have these conversations. You kind of need to have that kind of undergirding of what we say and why we say it and what the cost of us being here is. Not only what we built, we talk about that a lot, but we have to talk about the cost. So what I want to do is I want to get into the book, but I want to frame it in a certain way, because what we're talking about here, we're talking about not only the power of government, because a lot of people still try to deny the power of government. We saw that with the Smith donation to Morehouse. See, we can do it ourselves, and it was the reemergence of this sort of bootstrapism. And what I have always said is that, listen, white people didn't do for self. How are you gonna do for self as a descendant of a slave when white people didn't even do for self? It doesn't make any sense. So we have to understand that, and we also have to understand the power of timing in terms of government being used to undergird and being the engine of upward mobility. So this book to me is a good book to help us get into that conversation. So somebody said they got all the cookies. Yeah, cookie, milk, everything. So I want to start out on kind of on page 4 and 5, because on page 4 and 5 they talk about something that we have also talked about here in terms of LBJ, and in terms of him going to Howard University and what was said at Howard University. Let me get that right real quick. So we want to talk about that. We want to have that conversation, because we have to understand how we lived and why we lived that way. So when you talk about it says here on page 4, we're talking about, it says, he said, and we shall overcome. Arguably, those 4 words represented the most remarkable transformation by any president in the extended history of race relations since Abraham Lincoln embraced abolition. In the early republic, the United States had, of course, possessed the world's most developed system of racial servitude. Understand, everybody keeps saying race is all the same, racism all the same. The most developed system of racial servitude. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution abolishing slavery, endowing blacks with citizenship, and protecting his rights. So what you see is this whole kind of attempt at an undoing of a wrong that was done. You see that. And that becomes very important. That becomes something that we have to talk about. That becomes something that when LBJ is at Howard University, what he's talking about is how are we going to do that? And what you see when you go to page 5, is that everyone was complicit. So we're not talking about, well, just people, like these were some bad actors. We had a few racists. We're not talking about just government. We're talking about America. And that's why America owes a debt. But you go to page 5, start reading, beginning of the first paragraph on page 5, and it says, a combination of social conventions, racist ideas, economic compulsions, theological justification, political institutions, and harsh enforcement by police, courts, and prisons, buttressed by private violence, supported the unyielding inequality mandated by Jim Crow. Right? African Americans who lived in the 17 states that made it illegal for whites and blacks to step outside the boundaries defined this encompassing social order experienced an authoritarian police state, not a democracy of citizens. Understand that we keep coming back to this thing of citizenship. Everybody keeps telling us, you can't live, you can't use the flag. What you doing with the flag? Why y'all always got the flag up when you do your ADOS thing? Because this has always been about citizenship and not what this flag has represented or what it represents around the world in terms of empire. We're trying to infuse that flag with the meaning that it's supposed to have. This has always been about full citizenship. This has always been about the same thing. So let's go ahead because I want to try to go through it and get through it. Because we gotta talk about this whole book. We gotta talk about it. Conversations have to be had about what. I'm dropping my notebook. Anyway, listen, let's go ahead to page 6 real quick. And what you see here, you talk about American life. And it says, it is the effort of the American Negro to secure for themselves the full blessings of American life. Now understand, that's what LBJ was doing. When he was at Howard University and he was talking about affirmative action, he was talking about his speech. This is his speech right here. This is the speech. To fulfill these rights, remarks of the president at Howard University, Washington, D.C. He was talking about what America was going to do, what America needed to do, what America has to do to fulfill the rights promised us as citizens. And that's what the affirmative action conversation was about. And this is what he said. This is how he explained it. This is Johnson in his own words. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying now you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders as you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bring him up to the starting line of a race and say you are free to compete with all the others and still just believe that you have been completely fair. This is not enough just to open the gates of opportunity. All our citizens must have the ability to walk through those gates. All of our citizens must have the opportunity to walk through the gate. And he didn't even go far enough. Because what happened is not only were we behind in a race, that was just part of it. The other part of it was this. The other part of it was we were the shoes used in that race. So we were commoditized in that way to be the fuel for other people. So we weren't even in that. But understand what I've been saying has been said before. Sometimes when I say, oh, it's a caste system, people are kind of like, oh, well, what do you mean? What is that? What are you saying? Well, I don't understand. You're saying it's a caste system. What does that actually mean? We're a caste system or what? Go to the bottom of page 7. I don't want to spend too long a time at the beginning of the book, but I have to because some of the best stuff to me was at the beginning of the book. It says, only the termination of segregation in the schools, housing, public accommodations, and the armed forces, and only an end to lynching, police brutality, the denial of suffrage, and discrimination at work, in healthcare, and public services, the writers argue, could make American democracy whole. Even the most equal version of Jim Crow, it urged, could not alter this basic fact. A law which forbids a group of American citizens to associate with other citizens in ordinary course of daily living creates inequality by imposing a caste status on that minority group. Imposing a caste status, and that is what has happened. That's what's happened. We have an imposed caste status has been put upon us. And America has never done what is right to undo the caste status that was put upon us. We are still living with the caste status. And if we're living in a caste status, it makes you kind of wonder to yourself, how can anybody say that we're not old? Like, see, the thing is, it was all this stuff we're talking about, it was America's job to fix it. And on page 10, when you see how they carved us out of this, on page 10, what we get to is my problem with class-based politics. People say, well, why don't you think class is going to fix it? And Johnson kind of answered that. He said, to this end, and we're on page 10, second paragraph, to this end, Johnson insisted equal opportunity is essential, but not enough. Not enough. Johnson said himself, equal opportunity is essential, but it's not enough. Equality doesn't fix what happened. Equality is not redress. Equality is not restorative justice. That's just not what it is. Equality is not enough. And what we see is that even when you have these class-based projects, you can carve them out any way you want to. And so I don't see how you can be us and not distrust class-based politics, especially since nobody did that for anybody else who's gotten reparations in this country. Nobody talked about which was got to be, we're going to fix you with class-based stuff. And you see on page 10, he says something else. He said, history itself justifies this. The primary shortcoming, let me see, the justification is in history itself. Like the third paragraph. That's the justification. You don't need any other, there's no argument for us to make. The justification is in the history of what happened to us. Like if you want to say, well, why do y'all deserve that? Well, if you don't know why, you just haven't read enough history. I think that's part of your problem. It's not part of my problem. I understand it. And you see even on page 12, as we work our way through, when you look at page 12, look at the last paragraph. And it says, you'll see the line towards the bottom, they talk about special nature of Negro poverty. And what they're talking about is basically how Negro poverty is worse than other kinds of poverty. So this idea that poverty is the same, no matter time, no place, has never been true. And it's not true now. It wasn't true yesterday. It wasn't true at any time, that all poverty, this kind of flattening of poverty as if our poverty isn't different from other poverty. On page 13, during the Great Depression, blacks had experienced sharp downward mobility, losing the economic gains hundreds of thousands had secured by moving northward during the First World War. And you go down towards the end of page 13, it says the same thing. Let's scoot ahead to page 16. Negro poverty is towards the halfway through the page. Page 16. Negro poverty is not white poverty. The difference, he hastens to explain, are not racial differences. They are solely and simply the consequence of ancient brutality, past injustice, and present injustice. Unlike blacks, the white poor, many of whom had escaped its shackles, I don't know how many had shackles. But anyway, did not have the heritage of centuries to overcome. And they did not have a cultural tradition which had been twisted and battered by endless years of hatred and hopelessness, nor were they excluded. These others, because of a race or color, a feeling of whose dark intensity is matched by no other prejudice in our society. Is matched by no other prejudice in our society. Stop saying minority, stop saying people of color. Is matched by no other prejudice in our society. And you get how, see, this book is talking about how we were carved out. How we were carved out of the GI Bill. How we were carved out of the New Deal programs, because they carved out sharecroppers. They carved out, field workers, and they carved out domestics. That was like 60% of labor in the South. So you carved out a whole swath of us, and then those who weren't included still had other problems that they had to deal with, because there was still the process was given back to the states. So go on to page 17 really quick. Still an era of legal segregation in 17 American states and Washington, D.C. The southern wing of the Democratic Party was in a position to dictate the contours of Social Security, key labor legislation, the GI Bill, and other landmark laws that helped create a modern white middle class in a manner that also protected what these legislators routinely call the Southern way of life. So the Southern way of life meant we get to protect Jim Crow, and we get to protect Jim Crow at all costs and by any means necessary because we white and that's what we get to do. Go to page 18. We're going to keep it pushing. Go to page 18. You see some of the same stuff. The Southern power. See, and isn't that one of the things that the South was always allowed to rise again? Like the South was never defeated. You didn't banish them, or you didn't make it where y'all can't vote, you don't have no political power, and we're going to redistribute land, and we're going to rob you of because you were traitors, and you wage war against your own government. You don't have rights. No, they were allowed to just reassert themselves and keep it pimping like nothing ever happened. So when you look at page 18, you see it again. Guardians of segregation like Richard Russell. I think when I worked on Capitol Hill, I think there was a building. Was there a building named after Russell? I think so. Anyway, the exclusion of so many Black Americans from the bounty of public policy. Let me read that again. The exclusion of so many Black Americans from the bounty of public policy and the way in which these important large-scale national programs were managed launched new and potent sources of racial inequality. The federal government, though seemingly race neutral, functioned as a commanding instrument of white privilege. An instrument of white privilege. Now let me ask you something. A government that functions as an instrument of white privilege. You are the reason for this. If you function as an instrument of white, don't you have to undo what you did? Because you did this. You put rockets on white America and put an albatross around our neck. And now that we're sinking because of the albatross, you want to act like you don't know what happened, when it happened, how it happened. You wasn't there at the scene. The Democratic Party that fashioned, page 19, and superintended the New Deal and the Fair Deal combined two different political systems. One that was incorporating new groups of voters and who arrived from overseas or who migrated from the South. The other, still an authoritarian one-party system, still beholding to racial separatism. So you get to come here as an immigrant, hop over us, and then tell us later on, well, I don't understand why y'all can't do better. My grandpappy came here from Ireland and we doing good. Yeah, because it didn't exclude you. And the majority of Democrats were from the South during that time. These are the Dixiecrats we're talking about. We're talking about these Southern Dems on page 21. They go into that. We talk about who they are and what they did. And if you go on to page 22. Well, let's skip ahead to 23 real quick. Well, no. Let's read this. It's so much good stuff. Let's read on page 22 for just a second. It says, first, whenever the nature of legislation permitted, they sought to leave out as many African Americans as they could. They achieved this not by inscribing race into law, but by writing provisions that, in Robert Lieberman's language, were racially laden. The most important instances concern categories of work in which blacks were heavily overrepresented, notably farm workers and maids. These groups constituting more than 60% of the black labor force in the 1930s and nearly 75% of those who were employed in the South were excluded from legislation that created modern unions, from laws that set minimum wages and regulated the hours of work, and from Social Security until the 1950s. Second, they successfully insisted that the administration of these and other laws, including assistance to the poor and support for veterans, be placed in the hands of local officials who were deeply hostile to black aspirations. So you just gave it away to racists. Third, they prevented Congress from attaching any sort of anti-discrimination provisions to a wide array of social welfare programs such as community health service, school lunches, and hospital construction grants. Indeed, all the programs that distributed monies to the regions. Listen, you were distributing money and you left us out. That's what you did. You can't just do it that way. First of all, you set us free, and then you set us free and you allowed the Confederates to set up on us, right? You made us prey to that animal. Because that's what they did. They came and they robbed and they stole whatever little stuff we did get, they took it. Okay, fine. Then you excluded us from the New Deal. How do you think these people, like when you talk about the money and the wealth that white America has, how do you think they got it? When we talked about, how do you think when I say it was a rocket ship attached to them, like they got boosters. That's what I'm talking about. They got boosters. Meanwhile, this your people right here. Sharecroppers, 1939 they evicted out of sharecroppers. Because they didn't want to, the sharecroppers, they ruled that the sharecroppers were supposed to get subsidies, and they didn't want to pay them the subsidies, the landlords or whatever you want to call the racists who had the sharecroppers. And so they decided to, they evicted them, and the sharecroppers decided to put all their stuff alongside the street. We've talked about this on this show. And this is what it looks like. This is Black life. And what's happening is nobody wants to right this wrong. And the real question for me is like, how do you think you get not to right this wrong? Now let's just skip ahead. Oh, because there's so much good in the book. I be trying to move fast, and then I can't move fast, and I move slow. Let's go to page 27 real quick and hit these highs and lows. I'm not going to stay on page 27 long, but I just want you to look at 27, because what happened on page 27, which was interesting, is that it was a lot of Black media writing about the New Deal and writing about that stuff. So you really, for the Black people who could read and tell other people around in the community who couldn't read, you had like a thriving Black media. And I think about how difficult it is to try to disseminate this information now without this kind of thriving Black media, right? And so I just want to just put a pin in that and revisit that back. But it says on 29, the New Deal policies for Social Security, welfare, and labor market programs restricted Black prospects while providing positive economic reinforcement for the vast majority of whites, which is what we just said. And you have to understand, go to page 33 as we move on. Go to page 33 and understand what Black life was like. It says, living conditions were wretched. Not even in 100 Black farm families had cold or hot water piped into their homes. And only some 3 in 100 had hand pumps indoors, compared to about 20% of white families who could retrieve water inside. Whereas approximately 1 in 3 whites possess an icebox or mechanical refrigerator, fewer than 1 in 10 blacks did. White homes average 5 rooms. Black homes just 3. Often these consisted of 1 or 2 poorly ventilated rooms that prove stifling in the heat of summer, and overcrowded and unhygienic all year round. In 1940, 97% of Black rural dwellings lacked electricity. Urban housing was not much better. A national health survey discovered that just 10% of white families in cities lacked an indoor water supply, but 60% of Blacks did not have water in their kitchens, 75% in their bathrooms. In Birmingham, and we still got that. Loudoun County, hookworm, the stuff just comes outside. In Birmingham, Charleston, and Jackson, more than 90% had no facilities of this kind. And whereas urban whites in the South cooked with gas or electricity 90% of the time, the comparable Black figures varied from a low of 1% in Jackson to a high of 49 in Dallas. On page 35, you see black poverty versus white poverty. You see it's not the same. Put a pin in that. Put a pin in that. Life is not the same for us. And on page 35 and 36, you see all these different, like if you there are a lot of different, you know, when you go, 36 and 37, you see all these different programs from the Social Security Act of 1935, the Federal Emergency Relief Act. You see what you're really seeing is that America is doing a lot. America is lifting. This is a moment. This is a moment where America is lifting its people out of this as a government, out of this abject poverty, but we get carved out of it for decades. So until the 1950s. Understand like what that means for you. I'm not talking just about what that meant for them. Understand in terms of building and having any kind of legacy and lineage, that money that those white families got during that period, that money that they got, or that lifting up that they got, their kids and grandkids are still living off that and accessing it because it gave them that motor. We don't have a motor. We're like this rudderless group now. And nobody ever said, you didn't get that motor because that was timing. You can't give me the motor after everybody else done got the motor, used the motor, and doing stuff with the motor to oppress us and whatever. No, that's too late for the motor. Too late for the motor. Now you got a little dinghy boat motor and they done use all their motor to accrue other motors and bigger boats. No, it doesn't work that way. You also see on page 39 the limitation of charity. We talked about that. It says before the New Deal, most of the country's social welfare spending had been in private charitable hands. But see what happened is that the soup kitchens ran out of soup. Charity can't do it. That's what that era taught us. Charity can't perform that role. It can't do it. Page 42. In the history of American social policy, no legislative enactment have been more significant, influential, or enduring, and they're talking about Social Security. Unfortunately, the great majority of blacks were left out. Most African Americans we have seen were farm workers and domestics, and people in these categories did not qualify. Not until 1954, when Republicans controlled the White House, and you got to understand the switch between Republicans and Democrats. That's a whole nother show. But the House, not until 1954. So you're talking about that whole period of like amassing wealth and skipping ahead. That's everything. And I want you to go to page 50 really quick for me. Because something very interesting. I want you to hear a name that you heard. Start on page 49 because you're going to hear a name you heard. President Truman broke with the long silence about black rights by his predecessors to become a public advocate for fair employment and anti-poll tax legislation. The 1948 Democratic Convention adopted a civil rights plank passionately introduced by the mayor of Minneapolis, Hubert Humphrey, which fractured the party and produced Strom Thurmond's segregationist states' rights party challenge that carried 5 southern states. Understand, that's your boy's buddy. That's your boy's friend. You know your boy Joe Biden. That's his buddy, Strom. Before Strom died, he spoke at you. This is who Strom was. And this is who we were, and we still are. On page 53, 54, and 55, you see like what the Democratic Party is doing for unions, and you see what they're doing for everybody. It's just not us. Now skip ahead to page 78. Because it wasn't just Social Security. One of the promises of American life for us was the promise of, the GI Bill, and W.B. Du Bois thought, when we go to war, Surely when we go to war, they're going to recognize us and see us as actual people and do the right thing. And that would be a fair kind of assessment when you're dealing with other humans, you would think, I would think. But that's not what happened at all. That's not what happened. So go to page 70, go to page 78 really quick before we finish off on, page 70, I'm sorry, page 80. And we're going to start talking about war. When I talk about, it's funny when I talked about blood and soil, people are like, oh, Yvette's talking white supremacy. No, I'm talking about Negroes who fought in wars and died for this country and don't have anything for it. That's the blood and soil I'm talking about. I don't know why anybody would have a problem with that. Anybody who has any kind of knowledge of history. That's interesting. So when you look at page 83 really quickly, look down to the bottom of the page and you'll see Du Bois sought to achieve civic gains as a corollary to their steadfastness. Let me start with the beginning of the sentence. Once the United States joined the war, many blacks, including Du Bois, sought to achieve civic gains as a corollary of their steadfastness. Because they were integrated now. You remember that was the what was it? Executive order, integrated military, whatever. And so it says 5,000 Negroes fought in the revolution. The result was the emancipation of the slaves and the North. And it talks about the wars that we fought in and what happened and all that sort of stuff. And on where's the page with the Negro soldier? There's a page with the Negro soldier. But what you see, in 1919, President Wilson expressed concern after the war that the reasonable conduct black soldiers had experienced in Europe has gone to their heads. The uppity Negroes are coming back, and they're behaving in ways that are un-Negro like. Page 90. This is the black soldier, and this is telling. The picture in our country is marred by one of the strangest paradoxes in our whole fight against world fascism. The United States Armed Forces, to fight for world democracy, is within itself undemocratic. The undemocratic policy of Jim Crow and segregation is practiced by our armed forces against its Negro members. Totally inadequate opportunities are given to the Negro members of our armed forces, nearly 1/10 of the whole, to participate with equality. That's in parentheses. Quote, regardless of race and color, to fight for our war aims. So he was saying this is garbage. Go on to page 91. From Camp Meade in Florida, an anonymous Negro soldier reported that in his third week at the base, they started us cleaning the white officers' rooms, making us clean their dirty beds and cleaning their latrines, and are still doing that right at this present. We cannot go to the church service on the camp. The service clubs are off limits to us because a staff sergeant went over with some more of our comrades in the company to get the couple of sandwiches, and were told by our civilian worker we don't serve colored. And sir, this is an army post. Sir, we sleep in sand floors with no boards or nothing to bed. We stand up and eat each meal they call. The truth, sir, is we are nothing but slaves. That's a soldier. United States military. The truth, sir, we are nothing but slaves. You have to make it clear why this has to be done right and why this has to be made right. There's no other way. There's no other way to do it. You go to the military to serve your country and you got to clean out a white man's latrine and make his bed. By what right? And this is, go to page 95. Like what you see is that America just decided to give up on us. I don't know. And you can't do that and we be citizens. No, you have to make this work. They gave up on us after the Civil War. They gave up on us when they integrated the military too. At a December 1941 meeting at the Department of War to discuss this state of affairs, a group of black editors was informed that the Army cannot change civilian ideas on the Negro. The military would be unable to solve a social problem which has perplexed the American people throughout the history of this nation. The Army cannot accomplish such a solution and should not be charged with the undertaking. So we're not going to fix it. If people hate black people, they hate black people. And if they want to treat them differently, they're going to do that. And housing is not going to fix it. HUD is not going to fix it. President is not going to fix it. Congress is not going to fix it. Everybody has decided to give up, but we're still alive, and we're not even calling on them. Like the abdication that we haven't even called on them to fix what they broke. You have given up on us for 400 years. Understand that affirmative action was only like black in terms of ADOS for like what, 40 years? What is that for over 400 years of oppression? Slavery, oppression, accrued disadvantage. You gave us affirmative action just for us for a little while before everybody came and ate the food. Come on, people. Let's skip ahead really quick to page 113. Because I want to talk a little bit about the GI Bill before I get you all in here. We want to talk a little bit about that. Let me see if that's the right page. Yeah. No other New Deal initiative had as great an impact on changing the country as the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, aimed at reinforcing 16 million veterans, reintegrating, 16 million veterans. It reached 8 of 10 men born during the 1920s. That's a lot. Even today, this legislation, which quickly came to be called the GI Bill of Rights, qualifies the most wide-ranging set of social benefits ever offered by the federal government in a single comprehensive initiative. With the help of the GI Bill, millions bought homes, attended college, started business ventures, and found jobs commensurate with their skills. Through these opportunities, and by advancing the momentum towards suburban living, mass consumption, and the creation of wealth and economic security, this legislation created middle-class America. No other instrument was nearly as important. No other instrument was nearly as important. I want you to hold on to that. To be sure, page 114, the GI Bill did create a more middle-class society, but almost exclusively for whites. Written under Southern auspices, the law was deliberately designed to accommodate Jim Crow. Its administration widened the country's racial gap. Its administration widened the racial gap. This is a class program that was supposed to benefit everybody, but it widened the racial gap. Y'all got to stop telling me about how class-based programs are going to close the racial wealth gap because you say so. No, I know America, and I know what it looks like because personnel is policy. And who gets to do the programs and the authority that they're given and the authority that local governments are given and how this thing is written is everything. Not only are we owed a debt, that is the hugest thing. You're absolutely right. But the other thing is, I've seen this story before. I've seen this story where we're supposed to get something and where we're gonna put out a bill or whatever. And America ain't. I don't even think America's less racist. You gonna carve us out all over again, and you only get so many opportunities. You don't get this kind of thing happens once in a generation. So once they do it and you get carved out or you don't get enough or it doesn't close, because it ain't going to close the racial wealth gap. So then it's just going to be like, you just dead. Because it's not going to happen to the next generation. So you screwed and your baby screwed too. Because by that time, there'll be enough people here voting and there'll be enough buffer people here that the ADOS don't matter no way. And I think that's what they're trying to do. Just in-game this thing. We're tired of talking about this debt. We don't want to owe them nothing. Let's just in-game it. We'll replace you. So let's go ahead, Let's go ahead to page 120 really quick. In a study of the African American 92nd Infantry Division, and this is somebody who researched it, Meadow found that some of its members had attended integrated institutions, including the University of Chicago. But the majority had, see, the thing is, it's all these stops and starts, right? So you don't get to have any kind of consistency. You don't get to have any kind of consistency in your life. Let's go to page 124. I said, I wrote in the margin, the South keeps rising. The page 124 goes into how the South did what the South does. How the South just maintained power. Rather than adopt, we're still on page 124, rather than adopt the original proposal for a program to be administered centrally by the Federal Security Agency, the period's equivalent of today's Department of Health and Human Services, Congress placed day-to-day decisions about eligibility and policy in the hands of local district officers. So you just gave it over to racists who could decide for themselves who gets in, who gets out. That's what you did. You gave the whole program over to racists. And so go over to page 140. And that's the same thing when you look at what happened to welfare. That's the same thing. A lot of that is what Clinton did with these little block grants and stuff like that. And you put it back, you put it in the head. That's why I don't like people talk about states' rights and states' control. States' rights ain't did nothing for the Negro. Now look at page 140. A survey of 13 Mississippi cities by Ebony magazine found that of the 3,229 VA guaranteed home, business, and farm loans in 1947, precisely two had gone to blacks. Let me tell you, they were making bank off these GI bills, going to school, all these home loans. That's how they still, this is generational wealth. And when you look at why we don't have it, and when you look at why they do have it, you have to look back at the history of America. It's not nothing about not working hard enough. It's not about Steve Harvey and going to sleep and you sleep too much. This is it. This is ball game. Go to page 149. Because it goes a little bit into affirmative action. Right? As we come out of that and go back into affirmative action. Affirmative action. Now understand this. The intent of affirmative action. Affirmative action acts of corrective justice. Public policy is used to compensate members of a deprived group for prior losses and for gains unfairly achieved by others that resulted from prior government action. Please tell me if you are someone who just came to this country, what corrective action the government should take for you. And so how do you get affirmative action? If we're talking about using affirmative action as corrective action for injustices of the past, please tell me how you, as a person of color who just came here, are getting affirmative action as some kind of corrective action. Because that's how LBJ described it. And that's what he intended. And that's why he gave a speech at Howard University. Now, I understand that how Powell at the Supreme Court messed it up. But what I'm telling you is that we need to right that wrong. Corrective action, affirmative action. That is not equality. That is not everybody the same. That is not, well, we just going to be good to everybody now. That's what we talk about when we talk about class-based politics. They're talking about a corrective action for a specific group of aggrieved people. Nobody cares if LBJ is evil or racist. How many do you know how many racist people are on Capitol Hill right now? I ain't talking about 50 years ago. I ain't talking about 100 years ago. That's not politics. Y'all got to mature a little bit. Like, that's not politics. Politics is what can I get this person to do? I don't care what you feel in your heart. You're not my family. What can I get you to do? How can I move you? Listen, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that some of y'all were not keen and said I'm not going to meet with LBJ because he's racist, or I'm not going to deal with LBJ because he's racist, or I'm not going to talk to him because he's racist. Sometimes when you want to stand up for your people, you have to go look a racist in the face and you have to have that conversation. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? You have to have political strategy. You have to have a political tactic. There is no way that you should care about whether or not LBJ likes you as a person, or whether he thinks black people are nothing. That doesn't matter. The point is, especially after the assassination of JFK, the point is, what can we get him to do? That's the only point with politics. The point of politics is, what can you get a politician to do? How can you get a politician to act on your behalf? That's it. I don't care about what you feel in your heart. I don't care about what you say about me when I leave the room. What can I get you to do? What can I convince you to sign? What can I convince you to go over to Capitol Hill and twist arms? Because LBJ was a good arm twister. What can I convince you to do? I don't care about how you feel. I think sometimes we get so caught up in how somebody feels, and he called us the N-word. LBJ used the N-word more than a little bit. He believed in the Southern way of life. But and I think largely a lot of that was due to the influence of King and others who met with him. I don't know how many of y'all feel. I don't know why so many people feel like not meeting with somebody is like an act of power. You don't think MLK, when he walked into that room, he knew that LBJ was a racist? You don't think he knew that? He did it anyway, because he was like, I need this legislation. I can't do it no other way. What am I talking about? So let me just finish this quote. It says, public policy, we're still on page 149, is used to compensate members of a deprived group for prior losses and for gains unfairly achieved by others that resulted from prior government action. Corrective justice, the legal philosopher Jules Coleman has noted, is different from a fair allocation of goods. Corrective justice is different from a fair allocation of goods. Class politics is about let's give everybody an even playing field. Let's have a fair allocation of goods. That's not corrective justice. And you fall for the okie doke when you allow people to make you believe that a fair allocation of goods or a fair society is corrective justice. It is not. And we have never gotten in this country enough corrective justice. The little bit of stuff of affirmative action with no wealth transfer and none of the stuff that we need it ain't even nowhere close to enough. You would have to, honestly, I've always said this on the show, but I'll say it again. It takes more time to heal a wound than to inflict a wound. You can take a knife out right now and slash my arm in 2 seconds. It's going to take much longer than that for this wound to heal. So you're really talking about an American project that has to be more than 400 years long. That's what you're really talking about. And we're talking about do for self. Think about the ignorance of that. But before let me just go to page, what page is this? Hold on, let me see. Before, I want to hit out on something before I go. Oh, well, we've already talked about this. I've talked about how power was wrong in terms of in terms of, I understand what everybody was trying to do, but we've already had the discussion. I don't want to take it too long. But, so I'm going to take it to page 151. That's what I'll leave, because we're going to set up the calls. Because I want to get to the conversation. I know a lot of you read the book. I don't want to spend too much time having my own conversation. I want to get to the conversation and listen to what y'all have to say about, about the book and your takeaways. Like, what were your takeaways from the book? What did you think? Did you learn anything new? How does this undergird the reparations argument? Where do we go from here? And that sort of thing. So I'm going to, as usual, give me a few minutes to set up the phones. And then we will be back and we'll have a conversation. Hold on. Got the wrong thing up. There we go. right, fam. We are back. So I am going to the calls. I know a lot of people are going to be trying to get through today, fam. So I want you to expound as much as you can. And as you know, I want you to get your thought off. But let's try to, if we can, be as concise as possible, because I know some people are going to be trying to get through because everybody read the book. So I'm going to 803. 803, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's going on?
Hey, Yvette, this is Kel from Hopkins, South Carolina. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Okay.
I basically found an interesting quote that I wanted to bring up in the book. It was in chapter 4, at the tail end of section 3.
Okay.
At the beginning of section 4, and I basically highlighted, it says, the quote I highlighted says, ordinarily the rule that it was used was that 25% Negro blood made a person a Negro. Nonetheless, Hershey, the person that was in charge of the Selective Service Committee, made it clear that it would be unwise for the local board to disrupt, quote, the mode of life which has become so well established when a draftee in question has been passing as white, unquote. And then that ties up, the reason why I brought that up is, and what I highlighted was that this is where you start seeing the normalization of non-whites as whites, particularly transferring over to section 4, talking about how the war proved to be a particularly important junction for white ethnic Americans, chiefly children of Catholic and Jewish newcomers who arrived in the United States from the 1880s and the close of immigration of 1924, and saying how military training, wartime service, post-war benefits, and integration into a common American purpose brought many of these newcomers into the first real contact with white and mainly Protestant America, from which they had lived a physical symbolic distance, basically saying that it became a full-on American citizen. What the book doesn't mention is that this also applied to Latinos, because during the time period, World War I and World War II, when you look up the record, Latinos weren't even considered. They weren't considered a separate group. They were considered white, so they were not. They were not hindered by the same thing that ADOS veterans are hindered by, in terms of restrictions on rank and ultimately restrictions on access to the GI Bill. And the reason why I brought this up is because remember how a few months back how you had Ocasio-Cortez getting on Ta-Nehisi Coates where he said, when he talked about reparations and saying that, well, Latinos deserve reparations too. Actually, when you look at that's actually, in so many words, yes, because when you look at the time frame and you look at the history, the military was nothing more than a reflection of American society. And the fact that Latinos were considered white and did not have the same restrictions that ADOS people had, they were, in essence, normalized to be normal Americans. It wasn't really until the 50s and 60s where you started seeing them kind of labeled as minorities, and that was basically part of the Chicano movement and stuff like that. But
and was it just the Chicano movement, or was that kind of like a way to access? Like, is it kind of a way to access? So, like, you get made white because what you're saying is that, like, these other groups who were kind of in this in between territory, we put down a strong marker. No, this is, you get made white and these other people stay black. So then what you have then, when people who were made white, some of them who were made white, they come back later on and then dip into our pot when somebody passes legislation to benefit us. So you got made white, but since you're technically something else or whatever, you come back and claim affirmative action. So you kind of double dip in that way because because we're the only ones stuck at the bottom. Everybody else gets to move in and out of race as they kind of see fit. They got made white. All these other groups, because Italians, they used to call Irish people monkeys. What happens was all these other groups got made white.
Exactly, and that was the thing, because when you look at it, even when we look at the Chicano movement, partly it was partly labor, but then it was also mostly just identity. Whereas with the civil rights, it was about us gaining full citizenship. But that's all I had to say. I'm sorry.
That was very good. I appreciate that. You're right. Like that's the part where they talk about how everybody else got, and what getting made white means is that you got to catapult over us, and then you got to skip. So, like, you got to we've been here, built the country, been here all these years. You get to just jump over us, get made white, and have access to the bounty of America, and then look down and be like, what's wrong with y'all? So, no, you're exactly right. I appreciate that point. Thank you for calling in, Carl. I appreciate it. That was an excellent point.
All right, bye.
People get made white, dip in and out of race. It must be nice, just dip Today I'm one thing, tomorrow I'm something else. I'm a spaghetti noodle baby, moving. Must be nice. Anyway, for people who can just access whatever they want to access, I'm going to 216. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, this is Dominique. I'm calling from Cleveland. I called in a few times. I just want to say I love the show. I've been watching you for a few years now. That's when you had Emily on.
Oh, good.
I remember those days. But I just had a quick comment. A majority of my family is from the South. They moved up here during like 1920s and the 30s from Abbeville, South Carolina, which is an extremely racist city. It's the birthplace of the Confederate Army. And majority of my family served in the military. And it talked about, I thought it was interesting about the GI Bill, because I would always wonder, like, if they got the GI Bill, why weren't they able to purchase homes and be able to kind of like move upwardly in that way, just being able to get the GI Bill? But reading this, really highlighted how difficult that was for them to be able to do that by not having access. And then, specifically in Cleveland, if people don't understand, if you're not from Cleveland is a very, very black city. It's very, very black, blacker than most people really realize that it is. And for a very long time, it has been extremely segregated. It's only really certain areas of the city that are integrated in any real way. And my grandparents experienced that, they were segregated off to certain swaths of the city based off of just them being white. And you had a lot of newly immigrants have whole sections of the city that are, that were intentionally created for them, specifically for them. But that's all I really wanted to add.
Thank you for. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for calling, Dominic. I appreciate that. But I think this is kind of an eye opener, because you see a lot of people like, well, why did my daddy or why did my mama, or, my granddaddy was in the war, we don't got nothing, he must have squandered it. And it's just like, no, that's not what happened. Like, it wasn't an engine for everybody. So I'm going now to 615. 615, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello, my name is Dean, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee.
What's up, Dean?
Okay, from what I read off in the book, during when President Roosevelt had pushed in the New Deal. Within the New Deal, there was another act which was called the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938.
Yeah. And
basically what it did was it just normalized regular wages to get away from the wages that people, mainly white people, had during the Great Depression, and it normalized, and as each year it started at 25 cents per hour for the first year, and then it went up to 30 cents for the second year, and 30 cents within the period of 6 years. Then also there was like a maximum work hours of 40 hours per week the first year, and then as each year went by, it actually went down to 40 hours per week, which is what I guess you would consider normal wage hours by today's standards. But see, the problem is that in order to get that act passed, is that Southern Democrats, they had to say, well, you can pass this act right here, but you're going to have to put some stipulations in it when it came to black people here in America, such as, as a majority of people in the South, we made up basically agriculture workers, sharecroppers, and housemates and stuff and everything. So they had to exclude us from there. And within that, agricultural workers, sharecroppers, it was exclusively excluded them from those protections right there. They were given to white people, but maids, they weren't included in there. But it was like implicit, like treat them the same way as black agricultural workers. Just don't put it in the actual law right there. And the reason why I'm saying this right here is that white conservatives, they like to bring out this lapdog, and his name is Thomas Sowell. Is that his name?
No, that's his name. That's his name.
Okay. Yeah. So, they're starting to put him out there more and more. And he's kind of like, well, this is what's wrong with reparations. And there's so many holes in his argument. It's not even funny. When you look at his past, and I looked up his past on Wikipedia, and he was born back he's born in June 30th, 1930. and he was brought up in a single parent household, which a lot of, you look at a lot of ADOS people was brought up doing that. I mean, as of right now, back during that time, and his mother was a housemaid, so that goes back to what I just got to talking about housemaids, which a lot of black women were.
Yeah.
There was their occupations at that time, and that they weren't treated fairly, and they weren't compensated like their white counterparts were. So during the first great migration, he goes from North Carolina up to Brooklyn, New York, and his mentor, which is Milton Friedman, if you look at his background, he's not moving like a pawn on the chessboard. It's just a seamless transition from kindergarten all the way to college. But you look at his background, his background is like the average ADOS, but he's like in denial of it, so he's kind of like a white person in blackface.
Well, what happened? Well, what happened is some of these people get picked. Like some of these people get picked, like to do a certain thing, and like when you get picked to do a certain thing, they will take you around. But what you said about, and make sure you're successful. But what you said, let me just go back to what you said too about like even the minimum wage stuff in terms of Fair Labor Standards Act and all that stuff. We didn't get those protections. So like if you don't have it, like minimum wage means this is the minimum you can pay me for a full day's work. So what you're doing also is suppressing the wages of ADOS people to where like we don't get to we get to pay whatever that white sharecrop landowner decides or shop whoever decides they want to pay us. Like you can't build wealth, you can't do anything with that. You can't do anything with no protections. Government is supposed to be there to provide protections for citizens. You can't do anything if you excluded from those protections. But I'm gonna let you finish up, fam.
Yeah, and the reason why I want to say this is that my family that originated out of Moscow, Tennessee, back in the 1920s, they were sharecroppers too, and in their area, they weren't even allowed to even own land or even have an opportunity to purchase land to do their own agricultural work.
Yeah.
So he had to join the Navy just to escape, allow my family to escape out of their environment, which he did, and that was the only way they was able to get up out of there. That was through service. But that's all I wanted to say.
I appreciate it, fam.
I really appreciate what you do, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you calling in with that. Yeah, you can't, you have to be American. To build wealth in America, you have to be American. And that means you have to be given the rights of the rest of the citizens, the rights of citizenship. If you're not given the rights of citizenship and the government doesn't protect those rights, you never can be made American. You can't build what everybody's saying we should have. That is the problem. That has been the problem. And America has never solved that problem. I'm going right now to 706. 706, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. My name's Trish, and I'm calling from Atlanta.
Hey, Trish, what's going on?
And, nothing much. Okay, so I'm new to this whole thing. I just started,
welcome.
A couple months ago, and I got the book a couple weeks ago, and I finished it today.
Oh, good.
And,
right at the wire.
I made, I got through the part where, the last caller was talking about the AFL-CIO and all of the acts that they enacted during that time, during the 30s. Mm-hmm. And, it made me stop and start making a list of things that we're owed because of all the things that they really took from us. Yeah. So, I have this list, and I know that there's a meeting in Atlanta on Saturday, and I'm going to go to that. And I just wanted to say, I'm a boomer. Mm-hmm. I'm a late boomer, but I'm not like the rest of my friends. I've never been, I got mine, go get yours kind of person. I've been told that. So I never understood that mentality, and I don't get it. But I am so hyped about this. I feel like this has been what I've been looking for my entire life. So I'm on board. I got my list, and it's long. It's really long. But and I just wanted to say too, now I get stuff like my great grandmother told me that my grandmother, she and my grandmother picked cotton in the fields of Alabama when my grandmother was 5 years old. My grandmother's still alive. My grandmother was born around 1928. We don't know. And she's still here. She was a maid. She told us that she would work, you know, for different families, and they would pay her at the end of the week, maybe. And she never, like she said, she never made enough really to even just pay the rent. Like, it was she and my mom, and she was working but not getting paid. Like, what is that but slavery? Like,
but it is.
She was
but it is.
cotton.
Bam. But it's slavery by another name. That's what they keep doing. Like, my mother worked on a sharecropper farm too. Like, and she left because she cussed the man out. You gotta leave. You can't be cussing white people. It's temper. But that's what. When we look at that, that's why it's so crazy when people say to me, "Well, slavery was a long time ago." No, like even like chattel slavery was a long time ago. But the re-enslavement of ADOS people over and over again, and like when people can pay you whatever they want to pay you, of course they're gonna keep the money. Like that's why you have to be a citizen, and the government has to like protect you from predators. But we didn't get any of that protection. So like you have to make up for that. And so it makes total sense that you know, what they would do is count out their money and just maybe give you enough to like stay alive and continue to work for them. That's no way to build anything. You can't do nothing with that.
Exactly. I agree. But I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep supporting.
I appreciate it. Thank you for calling in, fam. I appreciate it. Yeah. Like a lot of people, like this is the best way, honestly, I think. I mean, people put pieces together. This is the pieces together. Like stuff you wonder about. When you go into history and you actually figure that stuff out, the pieces of your life, well, I don't understand why daddy or granddaddy didn't do this, or I don't understand why this happened, or I don't understand this particular dysfunction. It begins to make sense. So I'm going to 404. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello, Yvette. This is Chanel. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Chanel. What's going on?
I am doing pretty good. I am a monthly contributor. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so I want to just make 2 quick points. It's what the book did not say.
Okay.
So when the affirmative action was signed into executive order, it protected race, creed, color, and national origin. That was under JFK. After JFK was assassinated, LBJ signed another executive order replacing the one JFK signed. That included sex. Enter the white woman with the white man, the whole unit. That's why we got displaced, because sex was not initially in that executive order that JFK had signed. That wasn't in the book. And the second thing that wasn't in the book was the immigration bill that LBJ signed on October 3rd, 1965.
The Immigration Act.
Right,
the one that opened the floodgates.
That they could. Yes. So the sex in affirmative action in that immigration bill knocked us off the board. So it's always that we come up and then here they come.
But I don't try to, like, when I can't prove stuff, I try not to dig into it. But it feels very coordinated to me, right? It feels very coordinated to me that like you sign this and it's great, it's really great what you did. And then all of a sudden, because I don't think people know, with the immigration bill that was signed in 65, I think it was, they said like, no, it's not gonna, like the proponents of it said straight face, it's not going to result in large amounts of immigration. It's not going to do that. And that's exactly what it did. So I have to just ask myself if that was a way of kind of, since we gave them that, we're going to use this to take them off the board. You're right. That's a very good point.
Yes. So thank you for what you're doing, my dear. I plan to see you in October.
All right, fam. I appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a very good point. You give it with one hand and you take it with another. That's a very, very good point. I wasn't thinking about that because it wasn't in the book. But I wasn't thinking about it. But that's a very good point. If you're not going to be the cheap labor and we're going to bring something else in here and we're going to replace you and do a bunch of stuff. That's a very good point. I'm going to 503 now. 503. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, this is Quentin calling from the Pacific Northwest.
What's going on, Quentin?
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Some of the main things that stood out to me in the when affirmative action was white book, it piggybacked off what the first caller said. On page 128, it says the difficulties of the Negro veteran, he insisted, are not the same as those of any other minority group of ex-servicemen, for the simple reason that all other minorities are considered as being white, and with but few isolated exceptions are treated as such. So that goes back to what you talk about the normalization of these other ethnic groups who come to the United States, whether it be ethnic whites or Jews, Latinos, Asians. So I found even back then there was an acknowledgement of that back in 1946.
Yeah.
And I took away from the book that, when reparations are granted, they're going to have to be centralized and distributed and allotted by the federal government, no states' rights. So we would have to find a way to enforce just getting a bill or something passed for reparations, that wouldn't be enough. We would also have to have a task force to make sure the federal government continues to distribute and allot the policies and funds that would come from reparations as well.
Yeah.
So that was something that I took away from the book. And then, something else you said, you talk about us being a failure, exploitation, bottom caste. And on page 137, it says, black veterans were particularly vulnerable to black and white scam artists who founded such for-profit training schools funded entirely by tuition from GI Bill grants to individual veterans. So that was in relation to the trade schools that were set up that we were shut out of. And then there were these for-profit trade schools that were created. So we were set up to fail. And then scam artists, which were probably disproportionately white, came in and ate off of our failure. So even that...
Isn't that the American way? Isn't that the American way? What they don't understand is that this has been going on for generations. Where and we're failing because we get locked out of citizenship. Like, that's the thing. That's what happens first. We get locked out, so we can't take our GI Bill to all these wonderful schools and just go to school. So when you get locked out, scam artists be like, "I got you over here," right?
Yeah, and I kind of, it's just what it is. So when you say that, it really brought it home for me, because now, I mean, I knew you were right when you had said it in previous shows, but it really it brought it home when I saw that, because although there are so many historical examples, it was just nice to see, something else, because I don't know a lot about America's military history, not nearly as much as I should, although I've had a lot of people in my family who have served in the armed forces. But, and then another thing the author kind of put emphasis on page 160, he talked about how will non-ADOS, or, how will non-ADOS get non-beneficiaries to support reparations. The author kind of put an emphasis on getting people who won't benefit to get behind reparations. So that kind of, when I think about the work that you and Tone and Sandy Darity and the ADOS family, what we're doing, that kind of made a light bulb go off in my head. Like, how are we going to get all these people who don't benefit from reparations to get in? I don't care, but it was just something that I thought about.
Well, fam, honestly, if I could get ADOS people on board, I would be happy. Like, if let me do that first. Like, if I got ADOS people fighting and doing all kind of stuff and trying to take us out. Like, if I could just get the majority of ADOS, like, enthusiastically on board. Not like, I'm going to sit here, I kind of approve it, but if I could get that, oh my gosh. Like, the wind at my back, I think I would tear some stuff up. I think Tony and I, if we had to, like, near full support, we ain't got to have everybody, but half, 40%. If I could get that, that gives me the leverage to move on everybody else. But, like, we got too many people who are just kind of stagnant. But I understand what you're saying, fam, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and the book kept mentioning a racial gap. That's what they referred to, and I love the fact that you guys have come up with, you have done the work to get the data about the ADOS racial wealth gap, between ADOS and white people. So that's one of our key pieces of information going forward is the big, humongous wealth gap that exists between ADOS and white people in this country. So when I kept seeing that term racial gap, I'm like, Tone, Yvette, Sandy, Darity, and everybody else, they have the link. That's the missing piece of the puzzle. That's the 2019 updated and upgraded piece of information that is needed and much appreciated. And also, President Clinton regarded the GI Bill as the best deal ever made by Uncle Sam, and it just really brought out his ineptitude, and how dare anybody call him the first black president. I mean, I don't think he even knew that we got excluded from the GI Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, so, no, even if he did, I don't think he cared. I wouldn't think, even if he did, I don't think he cared.
Oh, no. And this is the last thing I wanted to say. Kind of the author, at some points, I was a little bit insulted by what the author wrote about reparations. He is a legally minded, person from what I've read in his book. That's the impression that I get. He's very astute on historical matters, but he is also white. But I feel like a part of the failure of some of these previous reparation groups, they left so many blind spots and weak spots for him to come in and just be able to dismiss. You cannot have a reparations claim just based on these enormous grievances, talking about colonial border. I mean, there's all types of wackiness and craziness. So they have really allowed people like this author. He's well-meaning. I believe he is. I don't know who. He's definitely somebody that has advocated for us.
But let me just say this, fam, and I'm gonna let you go on. I was disappointed. Forget that part. I was disappointed when he got to the end when he started talking about Powell and the Supreme Court decision, which basically made it Backy, UC Davis basically made it about diversity or whatever, and he talked about that glowingly, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? But that's what happens with a lot of these books, right? When and I'm not trying to insult I appreciate this book, and I'm not trying to insult anyone, but like what happens with a lot of these books with like white historians or whatever, they go all the way up and they talk about all this atrocious stuff that happened to us, and then they be just like, well, I don't know, how you gonna do, what you gonna do, rat-a-tat-tat-tat pop, you know what I mean? Like they dance out the room, like in terms of like what this really means and what they gonna have to sacrifice.
Oh, I totally agree. When I got to the end of The Color of Law, that was like a climactic letdown. I got to the end, and I was just like, what in the hell is this?
You're like, what you talking about? Well, I don't know.
I was so underwhelmed. I was just let down at the end of that book. So, I hear I'm on the activist circuit in my community, and now, they make up all these little weird words. I eat the fish and spit out the bones, but something that a lot of people are saying now is trauma porn. So, people just like to talk about the trauma of certain groups and talk about how bad it's been, but, they don't really propose or do anything serious about it.
I don't even think that's what it is. I think what it is this. I think these people are emblematic of white America. I think they are white people. So what happens is that these people particularly really understand what happened. But who they are means that, like, I don't want to sacrifice anything, though, just like the rest of white America. I don't want to really sacrifice anything to make this right, but I'm going to do this book on what happened. It's going to be a good book, and I'm going to give it to you, but I'm not willing to sacrifice. And so, and I say this all the time, I don't need white empathy, I need white sacrifice. And what we have far too often is like these white people they don't want to see that they don't want to lose whiteness. So like I feel bad for you, whatever happened to the black people, that's so awful, but you're not willing to give up whiteness and the privilege of that. And that's what we need, because we need to be normalized there in terms of you don't get to be white no more. We just American. That's it. You don't get to do none of that stuff you've been doing. You don't get no privilege, no nothing from being white, no wealth, no nothing. No, that's it. No. They don't want to do that.
You're so right about that, and I appreciate you taking my call. I love what you're doing.
Appreciate it.
Sacrifice. That's the word for tonight. Thank you, Yvette.
No problem. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate it. I'm going to keep it going, fam, just because I want to get to as many calls as I can tonight. I'm going to 301. I'm coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, good evening, Sister Yvette. How you doing? This is Marshall calling from the DMV right
Pretty good,
outside DC.
Marshall.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
All right, Sam. I am going to be as quick as I can, but I got to hit a few points.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest with you, I think the book should have started with the first paragraph on chapter 6, where they talk about Johnson's ambition, Powell's principles, and all that. And quickly, I'm going to read it to you. Imagine two countries, one of the richest in the world, the other amongst its most destitute. Then suppose that a global program of foreign aid transferred well over $100 billion, but to the rich nation, not the poor. This is exactly what happened in the United States as a result of the cumulative impact of the most important domestic policies of the 30s and 40s. Social Security began to pay old age pensions in 1939. By the end of the 1940s, its original provisions had been impressively improved. The GI Bill was the largest targeted, fully national program of support of American history. The country passed new labor laws, and that promoted unions and protected people as they worked. The Army was a great engine of skill training and mobility during the Second World War. None of these were a marginal or secondary program. To the contrary, individually and collectively, they organized a revolution in the role of government that remade the country's social structure in dramatic, positive ways. But black folks were left out. I understand that he bookended this book with to fulfill these rights speech at Howard and going into that chapter with Doctors of Laws, and then the full speech at the end. But he could have started right there, and that gave you the crux of this book right here. And reading this book, I'm so glad that you did a book club on it, because I got to go to the James Baldwin quote.
Okay.
And the things we want to talk about, to be a Negro, but I'll use ADOS in this term, to be an ADOS in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time. Going through this book and reading what happened to us, it's just like there's a fire. Like Marvisha said, you can't do anything without fire, but damn, it's like I'm reading this and I'm like, I'm super pissed at just what we missed out on and how it was. I mean, middle fingers to, I don't want to cuss, but middle fingers to the Mississippi Representative John.
Who? You broke up a little bit, Carla. Who?
Bill. No, I'm sorry. Well, I was saying, this guy John Rankins.
Okay.
Like I'm just seething with him. This representative from Mississippi. Who basically created the GI Bill, but it was very much like gerrymandering, and what they did in Pennsylvania and North Carolina with surgical precision, how they're going to make this bill, but make it very, as a business school administrator said, your bill is particularly desirable to southern states, when you were speaking about how, it's a federal grant, a federal government program, but it's being administered through the states, and how, like the gentleman said beforehand, when he was quoting a VA assistant, how Negroes aren't going to get this, because if we have to depend upon local Southern administrators to get these resources and benefits, we're not going to get them. So, I mean, it just makes you upset. But
no, I
will say this: when people talk about, a welfare system and all this stuff, understand, in Chapter 5, it goes into some of the federal spending on the GI Bill. And if you want to know what the white middle class, what welfare truly looks like when it works in this country, the GI Bill from 1944 to 1971, they put $95 billion into it. In today's money, that's a little over 1.2 trillion, and it was called the Model Welfare Program. And what does a Model Welfare Program look like? Further in Chapter 5, basically, in my notes, due to the GI Bill, you got 200,000 new businesses because these GIs were able to access loans from banks to start businesses. From 1945 to 1954, 13 million new homes were created. And by 1955, you had 2.2 million people who were participating in education, and another 5.6 who were taking vocational training. And of that, you got 400,000 engineers, 200,000 teachers, 900,000 scientists, 600,000 doctors, and 22,000 dentists. That's the white middle class for you. And it was all funded from government. So if anybody sits up here and tells you, about welfare and, y'all are on welfare, it's like you said in the beginning of this telecast, they didn't come up bootstrapping. They got a big time handout, a big time heads up, and we were left out of most of it. And the book speaks a little bit about, a black middle class that got a sprinkling here and there, so forth, but we could never really take advantage of it. And some of the callers hit on some of my notes earlier, but I will say this: it was an incredible book, and it's something that everybody needs to have in their canon as a point of reference to, go to.
Say that again, fam.
People speak about,
say that again. Say that again for me. In their canon. Say that again. In their canon. This needs to be in your canon to fire.
People need to have this book in their canon as, a part of a reference when people want to talk about, deficiencies in government and what government can't do and all this stuff. When government wants to get up off their ass and do something and, really help this country be great, all they have to do is not only go back to the GI Bill, but look how it was allotted, to people, and unfortunately, who got left out. So I hate that my phone is breaking up a little bit. I'm going to get off the phone and listen to you, but I will say this, sister, I just ordered 2 of my ADOS shirts, and I will see you in October. Love you.
All right, fam, I appreciate you. Thank you so much, fam. I appreciate you calling in, too. You always come with the knowledge. You always come with that fire. I appreciate it. And he's right. Like, it's crazy that we even let white people talk to us about, like, y'all be on welfare. Your whole life is welfare. Your daddy's life is welfare. Your mama, your grandmama, your grandpappy. Like, who are you to talk to me about welfare? And, like, the welfare we get is, like, extra food or a little bit of, like, maybe I can get in a moldy Section 8 a government product, something like you got like real welfare that like built like a life, built a middle class life. Our welfare is like maybe we can be able to eat, maybe we can get food stamps, and that ain't even like that's been gutted, but like maybe we can survive. You got welfare to thrive. Like we don't even understand what people are saying when they talk to us about welfare. That's your life. Your whole life is welfare. You starved to death if you had to live like we live. You're not built right. Like you got your life built for you. Like it's amazing to me that like we don't even know how to fight. That's why I made him say that again when he said this needs to be in your canon. I wanted him to say that again because everybody needs to understand that like once you understand this, you understand that nobody can talk to you no more. Nobody can talk to you and say anything anymore. I'm going to 919-919. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Miss?
Pretty good. What's going on with you?
All right. Appreciate. I'm all right. I'm all right. Just trying to get in, move in, but it's ADOS life. Trying to get myself situated, but I ain't gonna stay too long. Thanks for referring this book, and I finally got around to reading it. And I just want to just say about the military, the GI Bill, because I work around a lot of prior military, and I mean that Jim Crowism and training and services. I can't remember what chapter it was from. I just wrote it down. The special military camps that was set aside for ADOS, because they didn't want them, training with their people and so forth and so on. I mean, the Army especially. I mean, if you draft a plan for reparations, I mean, there have to be special, claims and special, calling out of certain entities within the Army. I mean, in the military. I mean, that First World War, and I saw that piece where it talked about, in the book, where it talked about how the Jewish was not sought to enter the crowded labor market, but, within probably like a 10-year span, from the Outliers book, I remember, just quoting from that, they were mostly, garment workers or people in garment trade, but they end up including them into this new world of, the United States. And it shows you how easy the government can make things happen for you when people talk about how you don't need government. I mean, they took a whole class of people who came from another country, and in 10-year span, 20-year span, these people became, they became lawyers, had access to certain benefits and set-asides and all those goodies that came along with that. And it just shows you need that. And lastly, too, I know the caller previously, a couple callers back, talked about Bill Clinton. But I think for ADOS, you guys need a social revolution. That was a key point. I know he mentioned that. I know you know when I were listening to the program tonight, I heard it was said in the context of Bill Clinton didn't really know what he was talking about, or kind of an insult. But ADOS, if you're going to attack him, if you're going to come at him, talk about that social revolution that he mentioned in his talking about it back in the 90s or whatever, when he talked about the GI Bill and how it changed lives. I mean, this thing is ridiculous. I mean, it's very ridiculous. Bill, it's a great book. I'm not going to hold the callers up. It was just a great book. It was a great referral.
Thank you.
Just keep going and doing what you're doing. And thank you guys for listening.
I appreciate you for calling in, fam. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I'm just gonna keep going to calls because I want to, like I said, try to get to as many as I can. I'm coming to 614. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? You there, 614? 614. 614 done clicked over to another call or something. 832 coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, this is James calling out of Houston.
Hey, what's going on, James?
Not much. First of all, I want to say thank you for the show. I appreciate it, the book club and everything. I just want to thank you and Tom for doing what you're doing. Telling you guys to keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
A couple things I wanted to point on chapter 5.
Okay.
Page 139 at the bottom, and I'll read from it real quick. I'll try to be quick. It says, blacks also were regularly denied access to the loans that the GI Bill promised. The federal government did not make loans of this or any other type directly. Rather, the Veterans Administration guaranteed them. In consequence, prospective borrowers had to convince banks to lend. One thing I want to say is that a lot of people don't really understand the power of the VA. And what I mean by that is, you got a lot of white people out here who are tapping into these veterans benefits, and they're getting like $30,000 a year from veterans benefits from, their service, and they're living in $200,000 houses. And, one thing you ask yourself is, well, how are they doing this? Well, because, when they get access to these veteran benefits, guess what? They don't have to pay property taxes. They're exempt from property taxes. So, they get these special provisions that they say they can't do for black people, but for ADOS, but I think they can. They just don't want to.
All right. And the next line was important. The next line was important too. But go on. I'm sorry. Of the paragraph that you read from.
One last thing I wanted to say about the whole Joe Biden issue is that he always says how he doesn't want to pay for the sins of his father. And if he's going to say that, then I think it needs to be the other way. If he didn't want to pay for the sins, then he shouldn't benefit from them either. So I think he should, they should get back to ill-gotten gains.
Yeah. Go.
That's
listen.
all I have to say.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it. Go. Yeah, you've benefited from it. You've lived a life. That's why you are in Congress. That's why you sit a senator. Like you've eaten off of it. Now you're like, I don't want to pay the cost. I don't want to pay the price. No, it don't work that way. You ate the fruit. I'm going now to 310. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
I knew that. I was asleep once again.
Hello? You got some kind of domestic situation going on?
Hey,
what's going on?
I'm sorry. You called in to me and my husband in the middle of a crazy conversation. Anyway, okay, it's Friday, Jazz. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm not all the way through this book, but I started reading this book and I thought about us.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about this HR 40. And what struck me is kind of actually where you started the show on page 20, and where it talked about the Southern seniority was exaggerated by not having to compete in the two-party system. And then it talked about how they chose the positions on committee. And HR 40, you know, some of what we're getting feedback from different members that are approaching their congressional representatives, they're just sort of being dismissed and told, oh, it's in committee. Okay, so then I said, well, let me look at HR 40 and let me see what the committee looks like. And when you look at the Civil Liberties Committee, and a lot of, there are 13 people in the Civil Liberties Committee, and then if the Civil Liberties Committee approves HR 40, then it goes up to the full judiciary. Mm-hmm. There are 13 members in the Civil Liberties Committee. Currently, of that Civil Liberties Committee, we only have 4 yes votes. Mm. Okay, so basically 9 of those members that we need in committee to approve are, not all of them are Southern, or not all of them are Democrats, but, you know, it's a nice chunk of them. It's like 6 of them, 6 of that number 9, 6 of that number 9 are from Southern states or Midwestern states.
Okay.
And so, and three of them are actually from Pennsylvania, and none of the Pennsylvania people are a yes on the subcommittee.
Okay.
So if you know, people kind of say, well, how is it that we don't know? Like before social media, there is no way, I don't think, for any of us to really understand or have understood this process, the process of getting a bill through. And looking at what we're trying to do in terms of reparations, and this is just a commission. This isn't even legislation to say, oh, you know, it's going to be, I always say 5 generations. It's going to be 5 generations of free education. It's going to be, you know, 5 generations of land grants to match land grants that were done for the white folks back in the day. We haven't even gotten to, like, what this thing is supposed to look like. You know,
and it's
supposed to be small business capital. We haven't even gotten there.
No, it's not. And
let
me just say this. Let me just say this.
Has been used,
it would need to be. It would need.
We're still being played.
Yeah, but it would need to be. I don't really get into this because we're gonna deal with it. We're gonna talk about it. But like, you would need the bill to study would have to be like a fundamentally, like, when you look at HR 40, that little short thing. Like, it would have to be a fundamental outlay in terms of like how we're going to study. Like, when you talk about studying reparations, we're not talking about the old, but we're talking about studying mechanisms for redistribution. That is a very complex bill. Like, I don't know if people who have worked on Capitol Hill don't know how long these bills are. Like, these things are like, I remember when Obamacare, people were like, I didn't read the bill. Yeah, because you couldn't, because they didn't give you time. This thing is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. Like, they gave us this thing that's very small and minute, and then move on it. And you gave it to us that way because you knew you weren't really trying to move on it, right? That's part of the problem. Like, that's why it's like that. And that's why it's like, I don't think, and I think we do have to talk about, like, not only how a bill goes and how a bill becomes law, but I think you have to also talk about, like what a fundamentally good bill looks like. Like, when you have a bill that's a bill, like, it looks like a bill. It looks like something like, oh, this is some shit. This is some stuff right here. Like, we don't really have that understanding. But see, I'm the kid who was like, Schoolhouse Rock. The little dude came on and said, I'm a bill on Capitol Hill. And I was like, oh, talk to me. I was 6, boy. I'm like, oh, you ill. Talk to me. How we going to do this? I think that's when I knew I liked politics. But I'm just saying, I don't think as a group, like, if that's not, like, I don't know that we understand that. And I think we do. That is something that we're going to have to kind of, a muscle that we're going to have to build in terms of, like, what a subcommittee does, what a committee does, what a bill looks like, what are outlays, what kind of appropriations are we talking about? Like, all of that stuff, that's heavy lifting. It's not politics 102, but we got to get there.
It is, and I agree. And what has helped, HR 6 was a big win, at least yesterday. There are stages to getting the bill through. So for HR 6, which was pushed by the Hispanic caucus, which was pushed by the Asian caucus, when you look at HR 40, compared to the language in H.R. Crick, we can, as students of politics, we can see the difference.
Yeah.
We can see the language is very specific, it's very clear, it's saying, I want X, Y, and Z. And when you compare the two, there's almost no comparison.
No.
There's almost no comparison. But that page 20, and talking about how, the Dixiecrats really use their seniority on Capitol Hill to forever stay in the place of gatekeeper was very key to me, particularly as we move forward with trying to get legislation through. Because I can see the CBC, Congresswoman Adams put that HBCU bill through. But when you look at the HBCU bill, it's another study. It's not saying that we want anything. So it's almost like, it's like that's understanding the game we're being played. Is everything ADOS going to be something we need to study, or is it going to be like the farm bill that Trump gave $16 million farmers? Like, can we get something?
Yeah, and I think
we have to stay professionally
and here's one thing I would say initially. Like, one of the things I would say to get the grifters out the room, one of the things that I've said, like, I want to be on that board, but I don't think the people who are on that initial commission should be paid, first of all. Because I think what's happening now is a lot of people want to be on that board because they want to eat off of it. No, you don't get paid. You get paid travel and your little meal, but you don't get no check. This is not going to be a grifter board. The second thing I would say is this in terms of what has to happen. There has to be an initial outlay. Like, since we know that there's going to be reparations, you should appropriate like $1 trillion, right? And just start putting that $1 trillion away for this thing, right? And that should be attached to the study, so that when the study, because what the initial outlay and connection of money does is say, we know that we're going to pay something. We know this is going to be more than a study. We just don't know how. But we're going to begin to put together the initial outlay of something. Now, when we figure out how that's going to happen and how we're going to distribute it, it's going to sit here. But you have to connect that. You have to appropriate something for this that's bigger than the study. And I think there's a way to do it on Capitol Hill too. Like, one of the things that the people who got caught up in 9/11 got caught up in, the first responders, is that stuff has to be reapproved and approved and approved. You also have to do it in a way, there's a way to do it to where it's kind of automatic. In terms of, you don't have to keep approving and approving and approving. And that's what they were also saying. But you have to do very specific things in terms of making that happen. And I don't think, I know we have to get there. And I know we're pushing for there. But, I got to get people on board to just like this as a thing. Like, this has to happen, and it has to happen, and it has to, like, America has always had the ability to give reparations. America's never had the will. Those are two very different things.
Correct.
Two very different things. But I agree with you.
I agree with you too. Keep up the work. I feel like we can do this. You have soldiers on the ground.
I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for just bringing this into my life, because really it was something I think that was needed for a lot of us. And I appreciate you and Tone so much for just sort of putting this in a way that the average person can take the information in and digest it. That's not an easy thing to do, and you've managed to do that.
I appreciate it, fam. Thank you for that. I appreciate that compliment. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to keep going. 770. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Yes, good evening, Yvette. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Oh, that's a good combination. Pretty and good, but I'm just good, but I'm not pretty. I just want to speak on something that LBJ said, like, for example, when he was a senator in Texas, that he tried to push through different racially based legislation that was rebuked by his constituency, and he had to push through some racist legislation, which kind of shows the power of constituents at a grassroots, that you can get behind your politicians and basically force them to do maybe what they don't want to do.
because I heard a caller before saying if the government will get off its behind and, just act, but they're not going to get up their behind unless you give them a direction in order to move, then they have no choice. But we got to come together as a bloc, as a constituency, and move our legislators.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, I just want to bring that point up, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I thank you very much for what you're doing, and I learned more from you than I have in school all my life. So
I appreciate
I'm just very thankful for what you're doing.
Thank you for calling in. I appreciate that. Going to 504. 504, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, this is BJ in New Orleans.
What's going on, BJ? What's up? How you doing?
Nothing much. I'm going to be brief.
Okay.
Page 154, chapter 6. This was Justice Lewis Powell. I'm interested in a lot of what the justices had to say, and I highlighted this, and it's in the middle. It said, first, there must be a clear and tight link connecting affirmative action remedies to specific, like you always say, historical harms based on race. This tie between past action and present policy has to be strong and precise. More general claims about racism in the country past are not enough. And second, the goal to be pursued by affirmative action cannot be vague or only of moderate importance. It must be sufficiently valuable as a social good to justify suspending rules and that ordinarily must be blind to race. Further, there is a non-racial way to pursue a given goal that course should always be preferred. He insisted on these two principles, that racial injuries be specific and clear, and that a compelling public purpose must be identified when racial remedies are applied, because a colorblind society is desirable and color coding is inherently susceptible to misuse. And I found that very interesting. Also, Scalia argued against that in 1979, that Powell had been wrong to uphold affirmative action in any form, he said. Restorative justice, he claimed, is inherently not right and not constitutional. The affirmative action system now in place, he wrote, will produce perverse results that would prefer the son of a prosperous and well-educated black doctor or lawyer solely because of his race to the son of a recent refugee from Eastern Europe who is working as a manual labor. I'm not a fan of Scalia, but I think that he was probably meaning instead of an Eastern European, maybe an African, correct?
Well, but even what Scalia was saying was wrong. Like, we don't really have a lot of prosperous, like the number of prosperous black doctors. Like, we had a doctor call into the show who was $400,000 in debt. Like, they look like even the doctors that we're not prosperous. We're not a prosperous group. And so what? Like, let me just say this. So what if America prefers black people, whether they are a doctor or whether they're regular, whatever? So what if we get a leg up? Like, this whole idea that, like, okay, y'all got messed up and we're going to fix how y'all got mixed up by being colorblind. No, like, part of what nobody wants to say is that maybe you get a little disadvantaged. There's not, because you have eaten a lot of advantage. It's not, you're not getting hurt because you're disadvantaged now. No, you got advantaged then in a way that we were not advantaged. So now you have to take that back. It's just like if I give you 10 cakes and I didn't get a cake, and I come and I take half of them cakes now. And so now you say, well, Yvette, I'm disadvantaged because you took half of my cakes. No, you shouldn't have got all the cakes back then. And see, we're looking at everything is viewed through the prism of like the white person today, as if the white person today didn't benefit and eat the fruit of everything that came before them. The world is not flat. You have had too much advantage. So of course, in terms of resetting this, we have to have more advantage. So like, you're not going to have that. Like you've already gotten your stuff. You got way too much. So what America has to do is like hit a reset. Because that's what it means to make us normalize. People say, oh, Yvette, you want to be white. No, whiteness is normalization. It's not skin color. Nobody wants to. No, it's about normalization. That's a reset. So you don't get the privilege and all the stuff of whiteness. So, of course, you don't want to make that sacrifice. You don't want to do that. But, like, why should I care? Like, I don't have to eat. And it's like, for him to say, well, it may prefer a black person. Like, a prosperous doctor. Like, stop talking about like it's all a prosperous doctor. We're talking about ADOS people in general. Right? And so, and why shouldn't that? And why shouldn't that? But here's the thing: why shouldn't that prosperous doctor be the preference? That prosperous black doctor. If that prosperous black doctor is competing and has a history of oppression, why shouldn't that doctor, that black doctor, be the preference when going for a job against somebody who just got here from Eastern Europe? Why not? Somebody tell me why not. Doesn't make any sense to me. I'm going to let you finish, Carl. I'm sorry.
No, I completely agree, Yvette. I just found that compelling, the justices and how they come to their decisions and how they reverberate in society.
Well, power. Or how they hide their racism. Scalia was notorious when he was a law school professor for like not passing black students. And I mean, it was like in elite schools, like nobody, like there was a great article about I put up a while ago. Elite students don't, in any school, don't just fail. Don't fail. They might they might not do the best, but they don't fail out. These are the best and the brightest. That's who he was. Stop cloaking your racism. You're a racist. Just be that. Stop talking about, well, no. You cloaked your racism in like the Constitution. Give me a break. Thanks, caller. I appreciate it.
All right.
I'm going to my next call now. Going to 205. 205. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? You there, 205? 205, you there? We got to keep it moving. I'm going to 516. 516. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? What's going on with the callers? 516. People been holding so long that they done gave up. We're gonna try it again. 510, are you there? What is going on? Is something going on with the phone? Let me see. 222 222 222 222 222 222 222 222 222. Let me see. I can't get them. Oh, let me see. Let me try this. Oh. Let me try this. Phones are doing something. Wow. 314, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you? What's on your mind?
Oh, I'm calling from St. Louis, Missouri. And you was talking about doctors and all the debt that they have.
Uh-huh.
I was born in '70, and I remember growing up with doctors in all these county hospitals we used to have, and doctors would work, like 6 years to pay off their debt at a lower wage.
Uh-huh.
And then after 6 years, they could go to regular hospitals. Then they start taking all the county hospitals away and putting up private hospitals.
Okay.
So I just wanted to bring that up, and thank you for all the work you do on APOS. And you and Tone, keep up the great work.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Now let's see if we can get the callers back in. I don't know what's going on. 516. Hold on. 516. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette.
Hey.
This is Stacy from Freeport, New York.
What's going on?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Everything is great. Okay, terrific. Terrific book, of course. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions, but one of the people who I took away from this book, who I always knew of, is Adam Clayton Powell Jr.
Okay.
And after reading the book, I went back and I listened to his speeches, and I feel that if we had 20 of these guys in Congress, we might get somewhere today. And the alignment of the Northern Dems with the Southern Dems really put the brakes on any progress that we could have made it in the past. Now, I want your opinion on Adam Clayton Powell Jr. for one, but I also have another question, which when we look at Social Security and our incarcerated, particularly men, these men are not going to have the Social Security benefits. And I think that part of that the incarceration is to prevent these payments from being made to these people. And also we go from Johnson to Biden, from affirmative action to the 1994 crime bill. How we can even allow this man to show his face is beyond me. But I'd just like your opinion on those things.
Well, listen, I think, I'm not going to go into it deep, but I think Adam Clayton Powell is complicated, right? I mean, on some issues, like, he was a race man, but, like, then he was so elite. Like, how many Negroes do you know that, like, sailed the Mediterranean, like, after college or something? Like, and then he's a preacher, and honestly, fam, like, that's not this show, but that's a whole show. Like, Adam Clayton Powell is a whole show. In terms of the good, the bad, and everything else.
Right, womanizing, yes, complicated, but he did speak out for us.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that, and he was a deal maker. But yeah, so I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think that's his own show.
Terrific. Great book. And would you say that everyone who's ADOS, who wants to be part of what we're trying to achieve, should read this book, have this book, and maybe if we had 20% ADOS reading this book, understanding it, we could push forward?
Well, yeah. I think you have to, because you can't understand what you're owed unless you understand what was taken from you. Like, you can't you have to really understand that we're a plundered group. And the reason I put these pictures up here while I'm talking is because you have to understand what that plunder looks like too. Like this generational oppression and suffering and hunger. Like, you really have to understand what it is, what it looks like, and be able to have this debate when it happens. And it's gonna happen. It always happens to everybody. You have to be able to do it. So I think, yeah, that is essential, and that is important. So yeah, it is what it is. I believe it's essential. And I want to thank you for calling in. I absolutely appreciate it. I'm going to try to get through like a few more calls. I know some of y'all have to go to bed, but I'm going to try to let a few more people in who read the book and want to have a conversation about the book. Let's try to keep it to the book, fam, because people read the book and everybody, other people want to talk. So I'm going to 248. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? Hello?
Hey, Yvette, this is Jared from Farmington, Michigan. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I thought I wasn't going to get in. I taught him before, but I'm glad I got in.
What's going on? What you think?
Okay, really quick.
Okay.
Really quick, pages 152 through 153 in the book, where they were talking about the case of Alan Bate, whatever you pronounce his name, trying to get into the school. In the case, Regents of the University of California.
You talking about Baki? Whatever it is. I think it's Baki or something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Baki, whatever you say. Anyways, the line that stood out for me on case 153, where the other justices with Thurgood Marshall, when they said they reason that race-blind policies in a race-conscious society can make access by minorities too difficult. And that was stood out to me because I think that highlights, what you've been saying for the longest time. You can't address a specific problem with just some type of generalized, solution. I just wanted to highlight that with an analogy. It's like you go to the doctor and you have a deep cut, a deep wound on your leg, and the doctor says, okay, I'm going to go blindfolded to this first aid kit, right? And I'm going to just reach down and just pull whatever's out. And whatever is out, I pull out, that's going to fix you. And it's not. It's really not.
He pulls out a Band-Aid. And see, the thing is, that's right. The problem. That's even the problem with Elizabeth Warren stuff too, right? Like, some people do only need a Band-Aid. Like, some people just have really small cuts, that's all they need. But we over here with gunshots and we got a Band-Aid. And you did the gunshots. Not just like we got gunshots. You shot me. Right? And like you giving me a Band-Aid. And I can't use a Band-Aid. But this white person over here can use a Band-Aid. They just got a little nick right here. That's perfect for them. Right? And then you want me to compete against the white person. You get like, we got y'all all Band-Aids. Why y'all ain't can't compete? Well, I needed more than a Band-Aid. They just needed a Band-Aid. So now they can sock me in the mouth and I can't even move my whole right side and I'm bleeding out. That's what it is. That's why class-based policies for us, this is a debt. That's why we have to keep talking about this is a debt. It won't work for us. And it hasn't worked. We have a history of that not working. And America is America. America ain't changed. America is America. Everybody is vying for their own interest in this country. I don't think everybody really understands that. And in terms of that, I want everybody, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Thurgood Marshall wrote his own. I think I might have read that on the show. Wrote his own what you call it in that UC Davis case. Go read that. Like, go read that, and when you get a time, go read that. In terms of his decision.
Most definitely. Hey,
yeah.
Right. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you. I just want to say, keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it, fam.
Love the show. Keep
Love you
doing
back.
it. You are doing the damn thing.
I appreciate it, fam. I appreciate it. Thank you. Gonna try to get through a couple more callers, fam. I know, trying to get people that y'all read the book. 510-510. What's going on? Cut down your background. Cut down your background.
What's going on with you? Okay, got it now.
Okay.
Hey, Yvette, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been trying to reach you, and the subject has kind of changed. So I just had a question with the one drop rule on African Americans primarily, on our group of people. Does that hurt our group, or does that help our group? And why are we the only group that has the lowest bar in order to be accepted into that group?
Fam, I would love to take that question, but I don't think that question's for today. Do you have something to say about the book?
No, like I said, the subject has changed a couple of times, so no, I didn't have anything. So, but I appreciate what you're doing, and I look forward to meeting you at the event.
I appreciate you too. I'm just trying to get through it. People read the book. I want the people who read the book to talk about the book. We can talk about the one drop rule and all that stuff. I just want to get to some people who read the book. Have a conversation about the book. 214-214. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, this is Lillian Madison.
Hey.
Okay, I like the part where you said that Martin Luther King had to talk to President Johnson, and that's a good point because we
speak up a little bit for me. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Can you speak up a little bit for me? I don't know what's going on.
Sure. I said we do have to start talking to the Congressional Black Caucus. I've called them. Their number is 1-202-226-9776. We need the Congressional Black Caucus to be in this with us. We have to get them on board. Just like Martin Luther King got President Johnson on board, regardless of what our beefs are, we have to come together as a people.
I agree, ma'am. Do you have a point about the book?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't read the book, and I'm listening, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Listen, I appreciate fam. I appreciate everybody. But if you're not calling about the book tonight, fall off the call, please. Fall out of the queue, please, because tonight is for people who we want to talk about the book. It's not a general advocacy night. And I appreciate everybody who called, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. I really do. But we need to talk about the book. That's the whole point. 903, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
This is Leah, and I'm from Texas. How are you doing this evening?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I did get a chance to, read through most of the book, I wanted to say that every day we are ADOS, and every day we have to fight like our life depends on it. I'm going to say it the way I usually say it to people here. I'm black every day, and every day these people seem to have a problem with me being black. So the most important social construct in America, according to this book, is race. That's how they seem to have based everything on. But I say that they're cowards. They have taken everything from us, and they don't ever let up. So we can't let up. I mean, they never let up. If it's not what they're doing to the water, if it's not what they're doing to the medicine, it's something going on with the shoes. It's just something all the time. And I think that they feel superior because of what they want people to see, but behind closed doors, I don't think that they feel superior. They talk about how they're going to do this and do that to us to keep us down. And it's all about us, and that tells me that we are very important. When they stole us and brought us over here, they didn't steal no junk. They brought something of value over here, and that is us. I was looking at a little piece on Monday. It was a CNN piece with actor Jeff Daniels, who lives in Michigan, and he says that what the white people really want is their jobs back and a chance to care for their families. Now this is what he said. So the interviewer said, well, what do you think that race plays a part in this? He said, yeah, it plays a very big part when it comes to the Republican Party, because he said this is their last chance to save the party, and they told Trump, we got to save the party. We want to stay in power.
All right, Carla, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. The book. I appreciate the input with the book. This is my last caller. I'm going to 951. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Yes, Yvette. This is Cleo from California. And I just want to generally say I really appreciate what you've been doing. I'm an OG. I'm an old-timer. Not really old. I'm still young in spirit. I'm 71. I've lived through much of what was in the book. And particularly the book, it directed itself towards the GI Bill, which directly affected my family. And my father was in World War II in the European theater, and in the all-black Negro Red Ball outfit, running gasoline and ammunition over in Europe. And he was from the South, Arkansas, and coming back from the war, he definitely was mistreated as a young man in the South, and could not take advantage of the GI Bill in the North. So, and really, that really affected the wealth or the accumulation or the movement into, my direct family moving into the so-called middle class life. And so that really touched me
personally, yeah,
because it just puts it right in perspective as to what has been stolen from us, what has been hidden from us. And I just want to end this because you want to take another call, but I lived through all of the civil rights movement and all of the so-called affirmative action, and whether or not I benefited from it as being a college graduate, well, it is debatable, but it's an incredible thing to realize that through all those movements, I've never in my life have had these kinds of breakdown. When I say breakdown, where you have broken down all these different areas in your platform better than any other
thank you, fam. I
so-called civil rights movement.
I appreciate that, fam.
I just really, really appreciate it. I mean, it's so much power and knowledge and information And so I just wanted to say, please be strong, stay strong. Even us old guys or old folks in the 70s, we still in the fight.
I appreciate it, fam. I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
And so, whenever you hear anyone talk about the old folks, just please tell them whether or not they like us or not, or that we blew the opportunity. You can just say, hey, at least you talked to one that is still in the fight.
I've talked to more than one. But it just ain't enough.
That's
but I
right.
appreciate you, fam. I appreciate you for calling in. I appreciate that. I ain't just talked to one. Listen, I'm going to 7. I'm going to go take one more. 708. I hope you read the book. 708, I'm coming to you.
Hi, Yvette.
Hey.
This is Allison from Chicago.
What's going on?
How you doing?
I'm good.
Okay, Yvette. Page 31 and 32.
Okay.
That is my great-grandparents and my grandparents.
Okay.
They were born in Arkansas, just like the previous caller. And I wanted to talk about that average per capita income of sharecroppers.
Okay.
Okay. My grandmother told me about how they used to sharecrop, and she said she was out there picking cotton, and she could understand when I was taking off to have my daughter, how I had 6 weeks off. She said when she dropped her kids, which was my mother and my 2 uncles, that she had to go back out into the field the next day. So we definitely have a fight, and I want to encourage everybody to fight for reparations because our lineage is so important. Thank you so much, Yvette.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate
you in October.
All right, fam. I see you. I see you there. I appreciate it. Listen, I appreciate everybody for doing the work. That's going to be the end of the callers for tonight. I appreciate everybody who... Listen, for future book clubs, listen, you gotta, if you call in on book club night, you gotta have read the book. Your other call can come some other time, but if you call in on book club night, I need you to have read the book. The topic is the book. I love how the first dude was like, well, the topic changed many times. So I thought I was just gonna slide in. Like, we're doing work. Book club night is work. Book club night is work night. That's the night where we all do the work and we all had a conversation. And and no disrespect or nothing like that, but I want this space for people who did that work. Like, they get to reap the fruit of calling in and having a conversation because they did the work of reading the book. If you didn't do that, this time is not your time to call in. So I will have another book club recommendation soon. I'm juggling between a couple. So I will have that soon, fam. Please, before you head out and go to bed and finish your libation, please hit that like button. Please hit that like button for me. I would appreciate it. Please do that. Please hit that bell for me and hit that bell so that you can actually get notifications. You can go to donatebrown.com if you want to donate. But also go to subscribetobrown.com and add your name to my email list. Hit that like. I already told you the like button, but I want to tell you to do something else. Did I tell you hit the bell? Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. And we the ADOS family here. Just hit that subscribe button and subscribe. And we're gonna talk politics here. We're gonna talk ADOS politics. We're gonna talk books. We're gonna talk news, current affairs. We're gonna dissect. We're gonna deconstruct. We're gonna do all that stuff. So please do that for me. To those of you who read the book, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you did, and I appreciate the fact that you are putting in real work in terms of a political education. That means a lot to me. So until next time, family, please get some rest. Please be heartened. And we'll talk again soon, fam.